guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, HOA Sued Me Over Christmas Decoration. I taught them a $39,000 lesson. My husband and I have a nice house in a nice neighborhood with an HOA board that has nothing better to do than harass people with different cultures and religions or those of us that leave our trash cans out for an hour later than they want. I honestly tried to fight my husband on purchasing a house in this neighborhood. He is a very eccentric man who likes to throw lots of parties and boldly and proudly celebrate his Hindu culture. He always wants to be friends with everyone and is not shy about decorating our house for any occasion. I think it pisses off the HOA. Nearly every holiday, even the simpler ones, we get some kind of threatening letter or email saying that something my husband has outside or in the window is against policy or unsightly or distracting. One time he put up a Hindu flag in the kitchen window, which you can't see from the road, only if you are lurking around the side of the house, and they told him he had to take it down. They claimed that it didn't maintain a harmonious relationship with the houses around it. What a crock of crap if you ask me. Anyway, as I mentioned, he loves to decorate the home for any holiday. Whether it's American or Hindu, he's going to go all out. Our kids love it and lots of the neighbors tell us that they also enjoy his over-the-top decorations. My husband, RJ, started leaving a string of yellow lights on the back porch. They were just simple lights, but they were in celebration of a Hindu holiday that his mother, who recently passed, really loves. He also wanted to leave them in an homage to her, whom he dearly missed. He also kept a string of lights in the kitchen window, which like I said, shouldn't bother anyone since it's off to the side of the house. We very quickly started receiving the letters asking us to remove the lights from the porch and the window, for it wasn't any of the approved holiday times that lights can be left up. According to them, they were a nuisance to the neighbors, who I know for a fact hadn't been complaining. Months of this go by as RJ wanted to mourn his mother. Eventually, my husband abided and turned the lights off, but became frustrated one night when he felt like they were telling him he couldn't honor his mother. He turned them on and said, "Screw them." An HOA meeting was coming up and he decided he would go and speak his piece with them in person since writing them letters got him nowhere. When we went to this HOA meeting there were few people there besides the members, whom were all super judgy looking and I already hated them. They immediately were glaring. One woman kept looking at my husband and I, her eyes shifting back and forth between us. I had already mentioned that I felt they were discriminating against us for our different culture and religion. Even though he was Indian, and I was white, it just always felt like they targeted us more than others. That day confirmed my suspicions for sure. I could feel the racism and hate in her stare. I did not like the air in the room right away. My husband, being his confident and positive thinking self, didn't seem as bothered by it. It wouldn't be long before he started to realize the people we were up against in this room. It took an annoying amount of time for them to even speak to us. There wasn't really anything going on but one person asking for them to drop some fine regarding her husband's truck. After they denied her, she quickly left with her head hanging. My husband stood up and the one bitchy looking lady told him that she would call on him when she was ready and that he could sit down for now. I immediately bristled at this. How dare she? They're not doing anything. She's supposedly writing something down and looking through papers but is probably just doodling on a napkin. Once Her Highness was ready for us, she gestured rudely to my husband to stand up and speak. He stated which house we were, and she rolled her eyes and bluntly said, "I know who you are, sir. The house with the lights that are on 24/7. All the board members nodded their heads and murmured how they were also tired of the string lights we had hanging up. Something about how they were against the holiday guidelines for lights and decorations. RJ was cut off several times as he attempted to explain that while they were not in accordance with American holidays, they were meant to celebrate Hindu ones. They continued to mention that even though they were for another cultural purpose, it is still their neighborhood policy to have holiday lights up only for 4th of July, Halloween, Thanksgiving and Christmas. No exceptions. Perhaps RJ should have known that talking any further would not get him anywhere, but he couldn't help it. He is a smart man, but honestly too optimistic. That's why he has me, the pessimist, to remind him of how shitty people really are. Poor RJ tried to say that he wished that he could keep the lights on the back porch up at least, to honor his mother who recently passed. They denied him quickly, no sympathy or understanding in their voices. Only judgment and an authoritarian attitude. It was disgusting. They dismissed us, stating that we had to pay an even larger fine for being late on the last two. That would wrap up to about $1,000. Which is truly ridiculous. RJ and I started to leave, but I stopped and told him to head to the car and I would catch up. I stopped next to a table that had a large pitcher of water and lemons and some glasses. Which was cute. I mean that sarcastically too. Like anyone would want to casually drink some lemon water while dealing with these assholes. You know there is probably a law against the level of discrimination you are showing my husband. The HOA queen in the middle laughs and says that she would love to see us take her to court. I calmly mentioned to her that I would be calling the local news and outing them for the racist pieces of shit that they are. To which she responded with more laughter and taunting. Being a somewhat scrappy chick who doesn't take much shit from people, instead of hitting her in the face with a chair, I simply poured the whole pitcher of lemon water on the hardwood, slowly, while I stared at all of them, then gracefully left. My husband was defeated for days after this. Somehow, they had managed to hurt my sweet and loving RJ, which filled me with a rage. He had turned off the lights and moved the potted plants his mother loved and the picture he kept of her inside to a sad corner in the kitchen. While he was pouting on the couch, I moved everything back to the porch and garden area where I set it all back up and turned the lights on. I don't care anymore. This little shrine of lights and plants meant a lot to him, and they wouldn't take it away from him. A few days later we received more letters, one saying that the bill had tripled due to water damage to the floor during the HOA meeting. The second letter stated that they were taking us to court for the fines that we hadn't paid them for the lights being up for the last 6 months. It may have amounted to about $8,000 in fines. Wow, the gall. I think the queen bee is doing this because of my threat to call the news about them. We kept up our lights and the fines kept racking up as we waited for our court date. It was near Christmas and my husband had put up some inflatable decorations. There was a snowman and a Santa. And a Hindu elephant. Our son and RJ last year had made a Christmas decorated Hindu elephant out of wood and other items. One day we came home, and it had been smashed and all the other decorations had holes poked in them and were deflated. My family was so upset, my son cried for an hour about the elephant. It was terribly sad and infuriating. I took pictures of it to show in court to support our case about discrimination. The court date finally came, and it was a surprisingly speedy meeting. It was rather casual, and the judge didn't seem like he was in favor of the HOA from the very beginning. He heard both sides of the story and after listening intently was very quick to say that the HOA was being cruel and ridiculous. The picture I took of the Christmas decoration massacre was just the nail in the coffin for the queen bee as she was ghost white with rage and fear when I showed them. The judge's glance in her direction was a scary one as he did not find it funny or acceptable to vandalize our property. He agreed with our case of discrimination and racism and awarded us a large sum of $39,000 that I was honestly not expecting. Our lawyer said that it was well deserved and the HOA was not happy. The judge stated that their rules and expectations about the lights and decorations were broad and ridiculous and that they could not use their power to harass people of other races and religions. RJ and I practically skipped out of the court and were funny enough parked very close to the HOA queen, who I was not shy about grinning at as we both flipped her the bird. They must have learned their lesson because we haven't heard a peep from them since about our home or decorations. Oh, and the policy regarding holiday lights was removed from the HOA rules and regulations. The next story is titled, "Am I the a-hole for not giving my brother half of the house and business?" My, 38 male, parents died when I was 23 and my little brother, Adam, 27 male, was 12. He inherited my parents' money in an account with me as payee until he turned 18, but he asked me to manage the account for him after that. It paid for his needs until he graduated and got a job in 2016 and it sat until 2020. I inherited the house, the family business, and massive debt. I planned to sell the business and house and move him to live with me, but Adam had a massive meltdown and the therapist I sent him to insisted he needed to be close to friends, even though we had no other family there and my entire life was in another country. Against my better judgment, I moved 4,800 kilometers back home. I quit my old job and broke my lease, tried to maintain a long-distance relationship with my girlfriend at the time, juggling my parents' business and trying to pay for a house with most of the mortgage left all by myself. I started dating Emily, now 34, when Adam was 16, and when he moved for college, he gave Emily his blessing to move in with me. We got married when Adam was 21 and we are expecting our first child. Emily helps me run the business, which barely survived 2020, the house is paid off, and I'm starting to turn a small profit again. In 2020, Adam lost his job, and I gave him the rest of his money in his account to support himself, and he asked me to handle the bills. Every month I'd send him some food money and let him know his updated balance. He doesn't have enough to pay for the remainder of his lease, October, and I warned him in January that Emily and I can't afford to support him. I gave him two options: get a job and pay his rent, and I'd pay his food bill, or move home and live with us for free while working for the family business. He lost it, saying that it was my fault for sacrificing my life for the business and the house, and that he shouldn't have to give up his life, since I was supposed to take care of him. I told him I gave up my entire life for him, and I struggled to keep the house and the business alive because he wanted me to. So, I don't have cash to spare to support him because I have employees and a baby on the way. He insisted I sell the house and business and give him his half, and I reminded him that those were my part of the inheritance, not his, that I paid most of the mortgage, and I kept the business alive, and I didn't want to give up everything I worked. Our grandparents, mom's parents, late 80s, I think, are the only living relatives we have. They live in a territory overseas and refused to take Adam or help us because my parents didn't leave them anything. So, I was stunned when I received an angry phone call from my grandma calling me a greedy bastard and telling me I should be taking care of my little brother. I reminded her that he's 27 and needs to get a job and take care of himself, and I let her know I offered him both a home and a job with me and he said no. Update: a few days after my post was judged, I sat down and had a video call with Adam. I told him that by the time I was his age, I had been raising him for 4 years already, and I had willingly supported him through the global pandemonium. But now the job market was the workers' market, and it was time to get a job again. He laughed and asked if I was serious, and I told him I was, that I was removing myself as a payee on his account, period, because he had been an adult for almost 10 years, and it was time for him to act like one. I said I did my duty and then some raising him, but I have an actual baby coming that I need to raise. I handed off all financial responsibility to him and wished him the best. He tried to backtrack and accept a position and home here with me, and I told him the offer no longer stood because I couldn't trust him to be a good houseguest to my wife and eventually my baby, nor could I trust him to not pull the "my brother owns this business" card that a few pointed out, too. I told him he needed to stand on his own 2 feet, not for me, but for himself. That he needed to learn to be independent. There was yelling and crying after that, but when I hung up, I was dead certain it would be the last time I ever heard from my brother again. I heard from my grandparents during that time, but I told them point blank that unless they were offering to financially support a 27-year-old man, that I was done having any conversations with them regarding Adam and his inability to be responsible for himself. To my surprise, he called me today to tell me he just got hired for a new job that he starts in 2 weeks, broke his lease and moved to a smaller, more affordable apartment, and met his new neighbors, a brother and sister who helped move in his boxes and unpack his kitchen. They already have invited him to their next game night with their friends. He's still a little sore that I wouldn't let him have part of our parents' legacy, but he realizes he wouldn't have a new job and new friends if I hadn't kicked him into gear, and that with the way he acted, he didn't deserve it anyway. The next story is titled, "Your use of public space is an invasion on my privacy. My mom and I recently moved. Our new home is in an apartment building with 7 apartments. Behind the building is a garden that is to be used by all inhabitants of the building. Now, it's for the past 30 years my mom has lived in the city center running her own pub. The only outside area on the property being our beer garden. She missed having her own garden immensely. So, as you can imagine, she was pretty stoked about finally having a garden again. She spends a lot of time there playing with our dog. The weather has been pretty nice lately, so I've spent some time getting some fresh air there too, and it's ideal to walk the dog there too. Mom even had some trees planted with permission of all other inhabitants. Alterations to the communal parts of the property require all inhabitants' permission. She's even planning to have a seating area installed in the back. All other inhabitants agreed, except Karen. Karen has the ground floor apartment with a giant, 2-meter high, 3 to 4 meters long, window overlooking the garden. She has no curtains on this window, no blinds, nothing. She stated she doesn't like the idea of everyone sitting in the garden just looking inside her apartment. She's also complained that my and my mom, overabundant use of the garden is really starting to invade her privacy, so she'd like us to stop it. Think I'm gonna be spending a lot of time in the garden this summer. Edit. Should probably clarify. The garden is pretty long, 20-ish meters. We're not talking about putting a seating area directly in front of her window, it's pretty far off from her. The last story is titled, The Queen Who Lives Upstairs. Where to begin with the entitled woman who lives upstairs? So many stories. I have lived in my current flat for nearly 7 years. When I first moved in, upstairs seemed nice. Closest in age to myself as the youngest in my block. I was 25, she was 28, when I first moved in. First thing to be said about her, she will tell you till the cows come home that she's a good neighbor. Looks out for everyone, blah blah blah. Within a week or so I'd hit my patience limit with the 1000th time shed slammed her door at stupid o'clock at night. Went to ask her not to. Got told it's not her fault. Our internal doors are fire doors, so they close themselves. I can't expect her to stop the door slamming every time. So, for a couple of days, I let my door slam all the time. She called the landlord on me. Roll forward to my first winter there. Knock on the door first cold night to demand I turn my heating on. I'm middle flat of 9. So, my flat is always warm, being covered all sides. I refuse at this point. I still had all my windows open due to the warmth in my flat. She had a full-on meltdown about how she's disabled. Only way she's disabled is that she's never been told no, and I have to turn my heating on, so she didn't have to waste her benefit money on heating. She tried calling housing and getting other people in the flats to agree I was doing bad by her and to turn my heating on. They all took my side on this issue. This has led to 7 winters of me putting a jumper on and snuggling under the blanket instead of turning the heating on the odd occasion my flat gets cold. She's saved me money as my gas bills are only a couple quid dearer in winter than in summer due to now only having heating on when having a wash, so she doesn't get to enjoy my heat. Thanks for listening.